We're back, Facebook Live. I had to go figure this out because it just rotated on us, and then I didn't want to be stuck sideways on you. Okay, so here at Daniel Schofield, he did 5,200 pest control accounts in the last 5 years, which is industry record. So if you're in pest control, you got to share this. Share this and tag your friends right now because we are live doing a DDD podcast, and it's going to be epic. I'm going to go podcast mode here right in a second. So here we go. Share this with the DDD tribe, somebody too. And let's go. Hey everybody, this is Sam Taggart with the DDD podcast. And for those of you guys listening, we have the DDD tour coming up. May 17th through June 18th is the last. We're starting in Salt Lake and we're driving to Orange County, then we're going to Phoenix, and we're going to Dallas, and we're going to Atlanta, then Orlando, Charlotte, New Jersey, Chicago, then Denver, and you guys need to make sure you're there. So go to d2dtour.thedddexperts.com, $40 a ticket. It's super cheap. Bring your whole sales team. It's going to be an awesome sales event just for a half day, and we'd love to see you. And then we're doing an on-site where I'm going to go knock with companies. So if you want to have me come knock with you, that'd be fun. I'm actually not stopping in Idaho, but let me know. So we'll book me out for in 10 states. So we're making a documentary on this. It's going to be epic. So I got Daniel Schofield here, very special guest. I don't know how I haven't had you on my show sooner. We've just been waiting for the show to get really popular. He has the industry record. I tried to fact check this and I was like, okay, in my head, like who could beat this? And so if you can, call him out. But I don't know anybody that has sold more pest control accounts in the last 5 years than this man himself. 5,200 accounts. He is a 4.5-time Golden Door winner. Technically, he broke his ankle. He was at 900 accounts and should have had it 5 times. And anyway, so one of the best in the industry. Like his best day was 31, 401 in a month. There's a lot of people just in other industries. If you don't know like what these numbers mean, normal person does 100 or 150 in the summer. He did 110 in 1 week. So to put things into perspective, right? Like that's insane. So today we honored and privileged to have Mr. Schofield on the show. So excited. Like, how'd you get, like, I guess I always ask, like, pest control, how long have you been doing it?
I had my first summer back in 2012, actually.
That was my first year at Vivint. No, not my first summer. But 2012, 8 years ago? 9 years ago?
Yeah, I guess I've done 9 summers now, which makes me feel old. Yeah, I mean, how I got into it was kind of a different story. So I got back from a mission, and it was kind of at that point in life where I was trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do? You know, the classic, what do I want to study in college? Where do I want to go to school? That type of thing. And I ultimately decided I wanted to be a counselor psychologist. And I've actually gone and I've got my master's degree in that. But 2 weeks after I kind of made that commitment, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And for those of you who haven't read it, like it does everything that book did to me, inspired me to be an entrepreneur and to kind of go outside the box as far as the normal college path. And I read it, I was like, okay, I want to be a millionaire. But I'm like, crap, I just decided I was going to be this poor counselor, social worker for life. Like, how do I
Those don't combo.
How do I merge these two ideas? Because I wanted to do the right thing, but I came to the conclusion if I could make the Rich Dad, Poor Dad dream work, like maybe I could have that much more time freedom to do something big on the counseling side of things.
Yeah.
So I set this goal, which is crazy, but I set this goal that I wanted to retire by the time I was 35 through the businesses I'd created and the assets I'd invested in. And I didn't know what that meant, but I set this goal and I wrote it down so that I could be able to, say to God, like, however you want me to serve you, like, I'll do it. And I always assumed to be something with counseling or, I saw myself instead of just like helping people one-on-one with addiction or depression, maybe I could teach seminars or write books, Now, 9 years later, my wife and I, it's our goal. We want to start a retreat for PTSD and addictions.
That's cool.
And that's actually like that's my end game. And don't let me get distracted talking about it because it's honestly a bigger passion of mine. And maybe you can talk about this a little bit too, Sam, but like I remember having all these big goals and, my heads were in the cloud as a young 20-year-old kid with lots of, cocky confidence, but I had no clue, like, how do you just nobody tells you how to be an entrepreneur, and how do you actually go down that path? If you'd never, and I hadn't heard of door to door at the time. So it was all just kind of.
So this was all pre even having the vehicle of door to door. So you're saying I want to be 35 retired. And you're like going to school. You're like, I don't even know how.
Now, I did, what was cool, the family that had me read Rich Dad, Poor Dad was super awesome. They'd invited me to come and work with them for the summer, and they were flipping houses.
Oh, okay. So there was a vehicle there that could...
And my idea was I was going to be this real estate mogul, flip a couple houses for the summer, and then go back to school or something like that. And the family was super good for me because if you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, he talks in there about like there's a rich dad mindset and there's the poor dad mindset.
Yeah.
And I was classic poor dad mindset. Okay. I remember having a conversation with my mentor being like, well, even if I like, I'm worth millions of dollars, like it just feels wrong to ever someday buy a Lamborghini. Because, if you buy a Lamborghini, that's money that you could have given to the poor. Okay. So classic poor dad mindset stuff. And I remember him saying like, well, if God is so good, couldn't he let you, have tons of money to serve and then also have extra money to get the Lamborghini?
I had this conversation and it's Lamborghini. Like the same conversation last night. Like
that's awesome.
So funny.
That was I had a lot of shifts that summer because I, like I said, I was raised classic poor dad. If you're rich, you're an evil person. You scam someone by getting there, and if you're poor, it means the poor dad mindset is, if you have a lot of money, is that if you have a lot of money, you're going to forget God. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or like whatever it is, these limiting beliefs that we have. And so that summer was really good for me, but I totally failed. I didn't do any real estate deals, got nothing off the ground, and kind of went back to college with my tail between my legs. And then, 6 months later, got invited by a mission buddy to come knock doors for the first summer. And like when he started talking, I was like, all my lights started went off because I'd kind of forgotten about all these goals I'd set, and I had no vehicle to like get there. And I think if you're a young entrepreneur, there's, with goals, you might come across like MLMs, but I didn't really want to do that. It didn't seem fair that I had to like buy into something to then turn around and sell it.
Yeah.
And then I knew friends that had bought into like, the real estate training programs. Yep. You can spend like 20 grand to learn the secrets of the rich.
Been there.
And I looked very closely at both of those, but I don't know, maybe I was just cheap and I didn't want to spend money. But the door-to-door world is perfect because you get this, in theory, a great mentor there, wanting to teach you how to be an entrepreneur, wanting to teach you how to sell. You don't have to pay him anything. He only makes money when you go out and are successful yourself. I think it's just the perfect program. And besides that, if you're reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, he says the 2 skills that you have to learn. And in his story, he says he purposely works for Xerox so he could learn how to sell. And then he even joined the military at his rich dad's advice so that he could learn how to be a leader. But that's built into door-to-door sales. Because you learn how to lead and you learn how to sell. And you don't have to pay a dime for it. In fact, you make money doing it. And I'm so passionate about it. I mean, my first summer, I was definitely, I guess I'll get on to talking about this. Like I didn't start out the gate great. I only sold 120 accounts my first summer. Which I think nowadays people would consider that below average, for first summer. But I made 18 grand and that was awesome. But I honestly finished that first summer feeling like I would have done the whole summer for free, like just because of the confidence that I gained in myself.
Because naturally you don't seem like the extrovert kid, like were you always the...
I have to fake it. Oh, totally.
I was going to say, you could tell you were nervous even doing the podcast and like getting on stage and...
Oh no, my business partners and my my co-managers through the years, they always tease me as being like the coolest nerdy guy that they know. I'm more of a timid personality. Now, once I'm comfortable, like I'll get out there and be extroverted, you know what I mean? But like, I really am grateful for my managers I had my first couple of years because they did help me overcome just the limiting beliefs I had about selling and stuff like that. I remember really thinking I would have done that whole first summer for free. And also I had this confidence that I could go and do anything I wanted. Like, because I just learned what I think is probably the hardest skill you can in the world, to go out and hit the streets and get your face kicked in all day. And I was like, okay, if I can learn this, I can learn how to lead, I can learn how to manage, I can learn how to be a public speaker. Whatever it is, I can learn how to run a business. Like, if I can do that, like, I can do anything, definitely... it changed my life, and I'm just so grateful that I went from 120 accounts my first summer. My 4th summer, I sold 380 accounts, and I just finished my master's degree, and I went to go do my first internship in counseling, and I was kind of on that fence of, like, hey, do I go back and do another summer? Do I move on? And I was actually planning on, if I was going to go back and do another summer, I was going to buy in and own my own location with the company, and kind of at that crossroads. All right, this story's out of left field, but I'm going to tell it.
No, I love it. Like, people, guys, we love these stories. They're fun.
Okay, cool. So, doing an internship for counseling, okay? And I'm going to try not to get distracted talking about it because this is all, like, my biggest passions. I'm actually training this really cool technique called EMDR. I don't know if you've ever
I've done
heard of it. Dude, it's life-changing. Hopefully it wasn't for you.
It's good. Yeah, where you're, like, hold the things and it kind of, like...
Yep. That's one way to do it. It uses eye movements too.
Yep.
And I'm just a little plug. Anybody who's got depression, addiction, anxiety, like, just give EMDR a shot. Like, if it works, it works, and changed my life. I used to have a lot of anxiety, and it really helped with that. And I was doing kind of my first trainees with that, and I was working with a client for one of the first times, and we're digging in his like deepest, darkest memories, And I'm sitting there as a new like counselor trainee, like, crap, I just opened this guy up raw, and he's raw and exposed before me, reliving his worst nightmares. And I'm kind of like freaking out inside, like crap, like, am I going to make this guy live this nightmare for like no good reason? And then I'm just going to have to, at the end of our session say, okay, thanks, come back next week, but the thought came to me that it wasn't just on him to like get better, but that if I had faith, like I could be an instrument to like make his shift happen, which is kind of a weird thought. You know what I mean? Because you think, well, that person has to make the choices himself. Like I have my own choices and I've encased my destiny, but if he wants to heal and get better and change, like it's got to be on him. But no, if I had faith, like I could cause a miracle to happen almost. And not to talk about me or anything, but 20 minutes later, I think I said a little prayer, and 20 minutes later, his brain kind of turned a corner, and next thing you know, he's kind of processed and shifted all this stuff. Which anybody that's done EMDR, it works that quickly for a lot of things. And next thing you know, he's bawling his eyes out and praising about how he's seeing Jesus and has this real healing experience in front of me. And I was just grateful to be an instrument to be able to witness that. Anyway, so the point of the story, to get to where I'm going, that night I was up late feeling like I'd been a part of this miracle, and no credit to myself, but like how, and the weirdness of how it was like my faith that caused that to happen, and in pondering about this, I had the crazy thought that if I were to apply the principle of faith that I'd used tonight, and also the principle of faith that's taught in the book Think and Grow Rich, which is my favorite book on success, that I could use those principles to sell 1,000 accounts the next summer. And who knows where the thought came from, whether it was from God or just my subconscious. But like, I remember being floored and scared to death by the thought, because it was powerful.
Yeah, like this is like a real thing. Like this stuff works.
But to put it in context, at the time, the top rep I'd ever heard of, Brigham Lindsay, his best summer had only been like 700 accounts as far as I knew. Okay. Yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go from 380 accounts to beating, the GOAT Brigham Lindsay, but by beating by 300 accounts, and I'm sure someone had done more than that in the past, but as far as I knew, 700 was the high watermark, And I turned to my wife, I was like, Julie, like, I'm selling 1,000 accounts this summer. And she's like, oh, great, I'm never going to see you. But like, as I said that to her, like, I knew it. Like, I knew that I was going to do it. Now, there was part of my brain that was freaking out. And maybe you can relate to this, Sam, or talk about this, but like, when you've ever set a big goal, there's like this part of your brain that's so scared to commit, like really commit. Yeah. And there's so many the basic fear is just like, well, what if I get my hopes up and then it causes me to be less motivated? That's kind of the basic fear, but like, you got to do it. Like, how else, like, there's no other way to reach big goals. Like, you have to commit to them and you have to believe in them. So that was a freaky 3 or 4 weeks, because right before the summer started, because I decided I was going to come out, but it's like, how many am I going to actually sell? And I think I was telling people 800 at the time, because, well, go ahead.
So, no. The reason I literally asked you, because it's like every year you've done over 1,000 for the last many years. And I asked you before this podcast, I said, well, how many are you going to do this year? And you're like, well, I don't know. And I'm going to maybe build more of a team. And I haven't really decided yet, because there is a moment in time where you're going to manifest and commit to something, like a number. And you're like, am I committed again to 1,000? And I'm not willing to commit to it unless I'm really willing to commit to it,
Well, and what's crazy, and you know this, Sam, is that happened to me in August this year.
Yes, which is a cool story, which we'll get to in a minute. This is crazy.
And I was at 200 accounts for the summer, and I'm like, I think I'm probably just going to sell 300 or 400, because it was just a crazy year, and I've got a long list of excuses why I was only at 200 or 300 in August. But but then I had the vision. I was like, crap, am I really doing this again? But back to that first story, that first 3 or 4 weeks before I went out and sold for my 5th summer, or I call it my first summer where I broke out. There was a lot of turmoil I had inside about like, okay, like, is this really what God wants me to do? And I want to, and not to talk about God too much, but I think a lot of people that listen, that have a faith in God, they struggle with kind of those just limiting beliefs about, like, well, if you set a big goal, what if it's not God's goal for you? Do you know what I mean? Or like, am I just imposing my selfish, manly, desires to be rich, onto what God's plan has for me, Yeah. And also just this general fear of like, could I actually do it? Like I said, I was telling people only 800 because 1,000 just seemed too ridiculous. And I had a couple cool, really scriptures that I found. One's actually in the Bible, and I'm going to share it if that's okay.
Yeah.
That kind of helped me turn this corner. All right, this is weird reading a Bible scripture on
I
a
love it.
podcast.
No, I think everybody can appreciate this. Like,
Okay, so if you haven't, read Deuteronomy chapter 8. It's freaking amazing, and it's all about God leading you into this a goodly land where he's going to bless you and strengthen you. Okay, but I'm going to paraphrase a few verses from here. And it says, "Thou shalt remember the Lord, all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to prove thee whether thou wouldst keep his commandments or no. For the Lord thy God bringeth thee into a good land. But beware, lest when thou hast built goodly houses, and thy silver and thy gold is multiplied," and I like that there. It's actually talking about
that. The gold is multiplied.
You know, "Beware that thou say in thine heart, my power and the might of mine hand hath gotten me this wealth. But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth." I just can't believe it says that there.
It's just like, I'm giving you power to get wealth.
Like, not just like reach your goals or fulfill the mission that God gives you, but to get rich. It says right there in the Bible that not only can God strengthen you, do you know what I mean? To like get wealth, but like he wants you to, and you can use it for good. And I just can't believe that's actually there in the Bible. You know what I mean?
I love that.
Because there's so much in the Bible. It's like, oh, money is the root of all evil and all that stuff. But like, kind of the next part of the story that helped me change my mindset was...
Well, I also think on that was like, there's this element of, do we doubt the fact that God has a lot of control and ability to help you get wealth? Like,
right.
Having that faith, like you just said, overcame anxiety. Like, it sounds like you had anxiety, you had insecurity, and you're like, whoa, I did something internally to shift this to get better. Well, God has the power to heal a lot of that, like fear, doubt, the insecurity,
100%.
the mindsets, the lack of mentality.
I say all the time, just to put a separate plug in there, is like, I used to have really bad OCD, anxiety, and I attribute, Christ and EMDR to healing 85% of my OCD. I've still got some anxiety going on, but like, if God has the faith to heal, why can't he do the faith? If we have the faith to be healed, why can't there be the faith to reach any goal?
Yeah.
And one of my favorite quotes is, one, all honest work is God's work. And two, anything we care about, if it's important to us, it's important to God.
Ooh, I like that.
And that's kind of the next part, is kind of how to tell the story. So right before the summer started, I was driving a work truck from one location in Idaho to another in Washington, and was going to be home and knew that I'd be surrounded by kids. And I was okay, I'm going to spend half an hour to like kind of be quiet and turn off the radio. And I was okay, I'm going to spend a half hour to pray. And I don't know why, but in my little pondering in my prayer, I made this deal with God. Okay. And I was like, okay, Heavenly Father, like, if you help me sell 1,000 accounts this year, I'll dedicate my life to you. Man, I felt so guilty making that little deal.
This little side hustle with God,
like, because it's like
bargain this.
I mean, it's like a deathbed confessional. It's like, hey, you make me rich, I'll go to church every Sunday. I promise.
I love that. Hey, if you're listening to this, hopefully you've made some deals like that before. Because I have. I know I have. I've been praying, and I'm like, God, tell you what, here's the deal. Here's my bargain.
And like, you feel guilty doing it, obviously, but like, I was totally sincere. And coming off of what I felt like were these awesome experiences with counseling, like, I knew that like I needed to make as much money as possible, as fast as possible, because I had more important things to be doing, and I've got my visions. I want to start my retreat. I want to write a couple books about self-worth, and that's like kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. And it kind of ties back into my mission, like, kind of like how I set that goal to retire by the time I was 35, through the businesses I'd created long before I found Door to Door. Like, my mission now is, as I'm on the path to get there, like, I want to inspire and lead others to be successful so that we can all be on higher grounds, so that you can serve and be an instrument in God's hands.
Yeah.
And I love that, and I want, and I hope that I can, with me building teams and recruiting and leading, or anyone who's listening really can have that faith that like God can use you as an instrument, and you owe it to him and to others around you to be the most powerful instrument you can be. And I think part of that is obviously getting financial freedom, making a lot of money so that you've got time freedom.
Yeah.
But I don't think God wants to use you for all the money you have. Like, I think he wants to use you for the skills and the person and the leader that you can become.
Amen. I've had, where was it? Probably like 5-6 months ago. I had this huge epiphany around where's the Christ in us?
Okay.
Christ was the example, right? And then we have prophets or whatever. Those are the examples. So you look at like, cool, Noah and the story of Adam and the story of whoever, right? And you're Moses, and you're like, that's cool. But you're like, what's the story of Sam and the prophet and me? And like my impact that God said, cool, I put you and gave you these talents and these abilities and these vehicles so that you can be the example and the light and let my light shine through you onto others. And it's been my like new journey. And I'm like, wow, I've just been blessed with a huge audience. Like, am I doing okay, God? Like,
No,
like, can I make sure I make you good? Because I truly am like, I just happen to do it through a vehicle, door-to-door experts or whatever, our events and stuff. But I'm like, at the end of the day, like, it's just camouflage for me being like, are you a better person? Are you doing things right? Are you
Absolutely.
like, developing better relationships? And like, whatever that is for you, like, I truly am like, maybe God just said, I have this like stewardship over this tribe and I need to make sure that I like live in congruence with God. And
That's so cool.
yeah, it was like this huge hit to me. And I was like, okay, God, me and you, let's do this.
Well, I guess just to kind of touch on that, like, right, but I was still kind of stuck in that, like, okay, this deal I made, like, should I have done this? And ended up finding, and all my stories seem to start with me praying and finding some scripture, but I found a story about how God's people were, they prayed and they were strengthened to defeat the enemy army. And then they made a promise with God that they would serve him, if they helped them win. And I was like, okay, there's my answer.
They did it. They got to do these deals.
And it just...
Pest control's a battle to battle the bugs.
Well, and that's and the quote I always say, that the thing that I learned from that kind of spiritual experience was that God can strengthen us to sell pest control, which feels weird to say out loud. Do you know what I mean? That he can strengthen us to kill people's bugs.
Why not?
But I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. So it's like, why not? And so I go out and I start selling, and I got to start early that year, April, because I was done with school, and sold 24 accounts my first week, which isn't anything great, but it was my best week ever. Week after that, I sold 40 accounts, and then I started doing the math on 40 accounts. I'm like, if I could just get a little bit higher, like, I might actually be able to do this, get 1,000 accounts this year. And to me at the time, 40 in a week was just mind-blowing. And kind of the last part of the story that it still gives me chills to this day that it even happened is I was sitting in Sunday school, like, I don't know, a month into the summer, feeling confident, because I'd had a great summer so far, on track to, maybe be the best of all time or whatever that meant, or break some records. And I was bored in Sunday school, and so I was just reading my scriptures, but found this scripture, and it's kind of the next part of the story I want to touch on. And it's a famous one, from the Bible. Whatsoever ye shall ask the Father in my name, which is right, believing that ye shall receive, behold, it shall be given unto you. And it's such a simple scripture.
Yeah.
I think you touched it on a podcast a couple weeks ago about how you love, asking you shall receive.
Yes.
Knocking it shall be open unto you. But I saw this, I'm like, I never really thought about that scripture, and it's almost like a promise. Almost like Moroni's promise. You can put it to the test.
Yes.
Anything you want, anything, if it's a good thing, and you believe it, God will give it to you. So I was like, I'm going to put this to the test. All right. So I don't know why, but the Bible talks about how the Spirit will give you what to pray for, but who knows? And I very specifically prayed, okay, Heavenly Father, help me average 50 accounts a week for the rest of the summer, and I want to sell 70 or 80 accounts in a week. And at the time, that was the biggest goal I could ever conceive, But I wrote it down in my journal, average 50 accounts a week for the rest of the summer. So I walk into the trading meeting the next day, and I'm like, all right, guys, I'm selling 50 every week for the rest of the summer. And they're like, oh, okay, let's see it. But I dropped 50 accounts that week. Best week ever. Next week, sold 50 accounts. But then the week after that, I only sold 35 accounts. But then I think the week after that, I sold like 45 or something like that. And it I sold like 50, but, had 45 service, that type of thing. And I remember at the time being like, it really felt like my average after that little prayer, I guess you could say, went from 7 a day to 8 a day. And I remember my wife at the time being like, good enough. Like, God's obviously strengthening you and blessing you here. And I ended up crossing the 1,000 mark at like the end of August. But weeks before, I'd already changed my goal from 1,000 to 1,200. And I crossed that 1,000 mark, and it was I want to fall on my knees and be like, I can't believe I did this, like, thank you so much. But finally, so that I find out that so it's like September 1st, and I want to talk about this. I love the month of September. Okay, like, I think the summer sales industry, like, we miss out too much on the month of September. Okay, so managers out there, top hitters, like, you got to take advantage of September, because all your reps have gone home. Okay. You don't have to manage. You don't have to do anything.
There's no training. There's
like,
no.
You don't have to whine. You don't have to take anybody to go take a dump. Like, it's the best.
Amen.
And I'd heard Brigham Lindsay's best month was like 240 accounts. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sell 260. All right, that was my goal. And and Labor Day, it's the best day of the year. Everyone says Memorial Day. No, Labor Day is the best day. It's the best day of the year. So I dropped 20 accounts, my first 20 day ever. And that first week I sold 80, kind of check that box. And then I ended up selling like 259 accounts that month. And so the best month ever. And then I had a wedding at the beginning of October. So the goal was to get to 1,200 by the wedding. And I was able to get 1,210 accounts like the night before I was going to fly out for the wedding. So that night, I'm just up feeling grateful. My wife already fallen asleep, and I think it was up till 1 o'clock, just on how fire.
I remember driving home after my video. I was like, yeah!
And then at 1 in the morning, I was like, oh wait, whatever happened to that 50 accounts in a week? Because I'd totally forgotten about that.
Yeah.
That thing. So I was like, okay, so I pull up my phone. Okay, so when did I sell 50 in a week? Okay, that was back in June. Okay, how many weeks has it been since then? Okay, so it's been 15 and a half weeks, but I took 3 days off for another wedding in August, so it's been 15 weeks. Okay, so how many accounts have I sold? Did the report, and 750 accounts. Okay, what's 750 divided by 15? It was exactly 50 weeks.
Wow.
And I start freaking out. I'm like, I can't believe I did it. Like, I can't believe I did it,
And God, the promise, it works.
And it did, And my wife wakes up and she's like, what's going on, Daniel? And I'm like, and I'm sitting there freaking out. I can't believe I did it. And she's like, and then I tell her, and she starts freaking out because she was there with me the whole journey, From the outside, it might not sound like anything cool, but like for me, it was like, I totally forgot about this thing, And like, then it happened. And
sheer manifestation.
And who knows what that is? Manifestation of your faith. Obviously, I believe in God and miracles, and I can do all things. Christ says that if you believe, if thou canst believe, all things are possible. And I'm a big believer in that faith in general works, and I love the law of attraction and all that stuff. But yeah, it was awesome.
That is so cool. And hopefully, if you're listening to this, you see this as like, you can do this too. I think one of my new mantras that I learned from buddy Jimmy is like, we are the they. Meaning instead of they did this, like, oh, well, that's cool. That's Daniel. I'm like, you don't realize he did 120 accounts his first year. You just said, he woke up, read a cool scripture, said, oh, God, I got this. Let's do this. Me and you, man. And he did it. Like, I think people are underperforming their true potential every day. And it's almost sad. Because had you never had that epiphany or that moment with God, who knows, you might still not even be in this industry anymore.
Probably not.
You might
probably not
be sitting here at a record-breaking level saying, hey, I can do this again. Like, why wouldn't I be able to do this again? Because, I'm sure after you do 1,200 accounts, you're like, oh, I'm never going to have to work that hard again in my life. I'm never going to do this. It sucks. Screw door to door. Like,
yep. And now I'm on 5 years of doing it, and it's like, huh.
Yeah,
and who knows if it'll happen again this year. I'll commit once it seems right. I'll commit. I'm trying to get a couple buddies to do it, though. That's my goal this year, is to get a couple of my other buddies to do 1,000 accounts. But to touch on that, I've had a lot of discussions over the years about that concept of like God's will. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, what if it's God's will for you to do it, Daniel, but not me? Like, am I like imposing? And the bad example I always use, but I'm going to use it anyway, is like, let's say you had cancer, and it says you have to have faith to be healed. So many people get stuck in well, what if it's like God's will that I die? What if I'm not supposed to get better? And I'm like, forget that. God's sitting around waiting for you to just have the faith.
Yeah.
He wants you to just believe. And then you're sitting there wondering, what if it's God's will? And God's like, it's my will if you have the faith.
Yes, it's like a two-way street. It's like we both go. And God, like, it's that whole knock and it shall be open. God's just waiting for you to knock. Like, you don't wait for him to open and then, oh yeah, I'm here. Like, it's like you take the first steps. It's that first step of faith saying, hey, let's go. And he'll fill in the difference. Like, I'm nervous out the wazoo with the Iron Cowboys challenging me.
I heard you're doing that.
Dude, he's like, hey, we're doing an Ironman. I'm like, an Ironman? Like, the whole thing? Like, like where you have to run a marathon after doing all the other stuff?
It's crazy.
And I'm like, okay. And, I've been training, and I'm like, there's no way in tarnation I can even come close to training for this.
I don't know how you're going to do it. That's crazy.
Well, my sister hits me in the nuts, and she's like, dude, put in all you can, and God will make up the difference.
That's so cool.
And I was like, it's true. That is just how it is. Like, if we don't have trust, that if we don't put in the faith and we don't put in the work, that God will find that weird one customer that was like, I'm sure you've had moments where you're like, I'm at 49 accounts this week, God. It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. I need to hit my 50. And there's times where it's like, lady drives up to you and is like, hey, are you the Buckeye? You're like, yes, thank you. You know what I mean?
Well, just to throw in, this is kind of a tangent, but like a hack that I've always been good at for the last 9 years knocking doors is one, poor dad mindset. I was raised crazy cheap. Okay. So like spending money on anything, at least my first 5 years in the industry before I actually had some money was like, well, once I learned that I could like get something like, you know, I'm into video games, you know, if I could buy a video game by selling so many accounts that week, like that changed my whole world, you know? And so basically what I do is anything fun that I want to buy, I write it on this running list throughout the whole year and I don't let myself buy it unless it's related to an incentive. Okay.
You build self-incentives.
Yep, and they're just cheesy ones, you know, like, okay, I'm gonna buy this video game if I get 50 this week, you know, or whatever it is. Like, and I force myself to like not buy anything, and I'll just keep running lists. And every Sunday night, I'll sit down. Okay, what do I want to get this week if I get 20 in a day? What do I want to get this week if I get 80 in a week? Like, and I'll
keep making it harder for yourself.
Yep, and then at the end of the summer, you're just like, you save all the good ones for the last 2 months because you're like, okay, I'm gonna throw every fun thing I want at this. And then
now they're like jet skis, new house. Like, you know,
and I have to admit, the last few years it's gotten a lot bigger. We did a treat yourself. That was my favorite. Like we did a treat yourself. My first summer.
October 15th, I deemed Treat Yourself Day.
That's awesome.
Like from Parks and Recreation.
That my wife and I did that. But this year when you do it, you got to put some goals to it. Okay.
I like that.
So you're not allowed to do it unless you reach certain goals. And my wife, we had so much fun. And we did it again this year. You know, you buy a nice new outfit, go to a $100 dinner, $100 meal, and go out and shopping spree. And thing is, it's easy for us. Like we both, you know, we go to the mall and we're like, this is amazing. You know, that's.
I'm the same way. I'm so easy to please. Like we went to Denny's the other day, and it was like. It's like my favorite restaurant. I'm like, can I get 2 orders of French toast? And they look at me, they're like, you seem so excited. You're like, yeah, it doesn't take much for me to get excited. This is awesome.
That's awesome.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. So let's talk about like the future. So how you started to predict and see, because a lot of people in direct sales, they get stuck in this like where I have been and where I've cemented my own identity. Because you could have easily been like, well, I'm always going to be a 120 account rep. I'm always going to just be okay, insecure, have anxiety, balding dude.
Thanks.
You know, I had to throw in the stat. No, I was kidding. But like, you know what I mean? Like you could have had this weird mindset, but you were able to start shot calling your future and start seeing things a little bit more in the future. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so for me, it goes back to my favorite book on success, Think and Grow Rich, and then affirmations. Okay, so you've read Think and Grow Rich, right? I think they say that book's made more millionaires than any other book. And virtually every other self-help book I've read is like some version of
the same principles,
of the principles in there. And the basics of this, so secrets to success, broken down in a nutshell. You have to have desire, and then you have to have faith that you can reach your goals, and then you have to every morning and every night say those goals out loud, and while you're saying them, believe and see and feel yourself reaching the goals.
Yes.
Okay? So that's the basic formula to success of every self-help book that I've read.
Okay, so if that's I'm going to put 2 cents to this. If that is the simplest formula, where it's like just before you go to bed and when you wake up, say them out loud and start affirmation, why is it that we say this, we talk about it, that no one does it?
You took the words out of my mouth. I asked that, like, how many times this last year? Like, did you actually do it?
Did you actually do it? Yeah, like, oh, we read it, we talk about it, we tell it. It's like, I don't do it.
And I don't admit to doing it more than half the time. I probably do it in the summer. You know, if you're supposed to do it, 700 days out of the year. Throughout the whole year, I probably do it 300 times. Okay, so not magic, but I bet I'm in the top 1% of people that try to do this and follow through with it. And my first summer, my manager, he was awesome. David Merrill, shout out to David Merrill, and his brother Justin. David had his copy of Think and Grow Rich highlighted like it was the scriptures, okay? And I was just young and believable, and I just said, okay, I'm gonna believe in this. And so I wrote out my affirmations, and every morning I'd go running for like 2 minutes, and I'd do my affirmations out loud, and I'd be like, okay, I'm a positive, skilled, and confident salesman. And I tell my first summer, and I say, I sell 10 a day every single day. I sell 10 a day every single day. Because that's what the book taught, is that it's all a matter of limiting belief. And I just said, okay, I'm going to choose to believe that these principles are right. That I basically have to convince my subconscious mind that I am worth a certain amount of success. And the way I do that is because there's another book I love called Being Happy, which is sort of like a mixture of Tony Robbins mixed with Think and Grow Rich. And it talks about the patterns that we have, you know, the negative patterns and the good patterns of success. whether that mindset's I'm not good enough to be successful, I'm always a winner. A lot of those come from our early childhood. And how do you overcome those? Well, the way you do that is you create new tapes by doing affirmations. And so if you can consciously every day tell yourself, I'm a positive, skilled, and confident leader, recruiter, I'm a great businessman, people love listening to me, I deserve attention and respect, like whatever attribute you want to give, and then you put out there what your goals are, eventually those conscious things will get recorded onto your subconscious, and they'll then play back to you without you having to work for it.
Love that.
You will become confident by telling yourself you're confident.
Nugget. Love that.
Which is so counterintuitive, right? You don't think about it, but like you can become confident simply by telling yourself you're confident, and eventually, like, yeah, those tapes will propel you forward, and you won't have to work at it. And also, I do think there's some, whether it's faith, faith in God or faith in the universe, if you put those good vibes out there, like the law of attraction will bring them back to you. So I believed all this kind of naively, and for 5 years, I would run and tell myself I sell 10 a day every single day. And my first summer, I sold 1.5 a day every single day. My second summer, kept up the faith, sold 2.5 a day every single day. Fourth summer, bumped it up a little bit, sold 3.5 a day every single day. Going to my fifth summer, had that big vision, gonna sell 1,000 accounts, start selling 7 a day every single day, bump it up to 8 a day.
But you never changed the 10 a day.
No, but I just kept it up, okay? And
because it'd be easy to get discouraged when you're not doing 10 a day.
Right?
That is a huge principle right there, guys. Like, pay attention. He still said 10 a day, even though he was only doing 2 a day. He was like doing this 2-minute run. I want to watch you. I want to have like a fly on the wall and be like, little 2-minute run. Do your affirmations.
So I'm always like looking around, like making sure nobody's watching, because I'm like shouting to myself, like I'm screaming, and I'm getting myself pumped up. And like by the time I'm done with my little run, like it's like my whole being is like, no, I'm gonna do it. Like I feel it, like from the head of my, from the top of my head to the bottom of my foot, like I'm going to reach my goals.
Love that.
My goal by the end of the run is you almost get yourself into a place where you like know that you're gonna do it. And actually I wanna touch on that. Like my fourth summer before I broke out, I had a day where I sold 10 in a day. Okay, my first 10 day, and that was the biggest deal to me, sell 10 in a day. But like at the beginning of the day, I knew I was gonna sell 10 in a day. Why? Because I'd spent years training my brain to believe that was normal. It's all a watermark. Like it's like breaking the 4-minute mile. You just have to convince yourself that it's easy. And I spent 10 years, and the day that it finally happened, like my mentor, Travis, shout out to Travis, he always talks about how you have these moments where you can see into the future. And I remember the year before, he was coaching me to get to like 400 accounts. And I remember like my brain hurting, like, oh, is that even possible? Like I can't imagine like selling 400 in the summer. But like he talked to me about this vision of faith, and I did. I had a vision like, no, if I wanted to, like I could sell 10. And so much so that when I sold my 10th account that night at 9:30, I was like, well, yeah, I knew I would. And I didn't have any doubt. There wasn't like a surprise, like I knew it was going to happen, because you created it in your mind spiritually, like before you manifest it physically. And for me, the number one way to do that is affirmations.
Wow. This is good stuff, guys. If you're liking this, one, we're going to put some more sales techniques and mechanics in the university. So if you haven't checked out Pest University for us, it's going to be really good. Two, share this. Like, guys, this is massive amounts of value coming from somebody that's broken industry records. And I just asked to, one, leave a review, give Daniel a shout out, two, share this so other people can also benefit from this. But honestly, like this has been good. We got to kind of wrap up, because I'm like, we don't give them all.
Well, just to finish a little story about affirmations. If it works with 10 in a day, like why can't it work with 30 in a day?
Yeah.
And so after I did my first 1,200 summer, I set a goal to sell 400 a month, and I set a goal to sell 300 a month, and I set a goal to sell 30 in a day. And there's huge stories that go with that. But I spent 2 years doing affirmations of I'm going to sell 300 a month. I'm going to sell 300 a month. And then finally it manifested with this day where I was reading my scriptures and it's like, okay, now is the time. And it worked. And I set the goal to sell 4, and I changed my goal from 300 to 400, and I sold 400. Sold and serviced 401 accounts in a month. And then it was 2 years later that I finally, every Labor Day, it's my tradition to try and sell 30 in a day. Okay, so that's my tradition. And it took me 5 years of doing these affirmations every morning and every night. I'm going to sell 30 in a day, 30 in a day. I'm going to sell 30 in a day. And it was 5 years of doing that. And finally, just this last September, I was like, okay, today's the day. I'm going to do it. And I made a whole plan of how I was going to start at 8 a.m. and get a deal every 26 minutes and these are 30 separate people too. Like this is like
Yeah, just to talk to 30 people sometimes hard in a day.
Like and I'm not double counting contracts. Like
Yeah.
we don't do mosquitoes in Washington really, and so like 30. My goal is to sell and close and service 30 separate individuals,
Amazing.
which is and so I call my mom, have my wife and my sister all praying for me. Shout out to them. They've done so many prayers for me over the years. With my crazy goals, and I finally did it. Like I started at 8 a.m., finished at 9:30 or something like that. I think so the last guy pulled a gun on me.
And you sold him?
I sold him. Yeah.
Yes, that's amazing. Love those stories.
But I sold 32, and because I knew I had to get a couple extra. And the miracle is I was scheduled out a week, which normally if I'm scheduled out a week, like I have like 1 out of 8 cancel, and only 1 canceled. So I had 31 go in. But I knew that it would. Like I finished the night. I'm like, they're all gonna go in. Like I didn't have any doubt because I'd manifested like, and I just knew it would work.
That is so cool. Guys, you heard it firsthand. This is amazing. Thank you so much for like sharing with us. This has been so good. Like, and I know that there's like so much, and I'm sure that we're going to be doing more stuff together. You know, maybe have a workshop or something, DVCon, or do some.
That'd be great.
I want to help support you in your goal, like to be and open up this addiction center, and anything I can do to help, man. I love your goals and your vision. So it's awesome, dude. Thank you so much. Okay, see you guys. Much love. Hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, share, comment, and give us a review. Love you guys.